Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. Here we'll talk to the leaders in technology, culture, business, and the arts. We'll cover politics, advocacy, motherhood, writing, mental health, and mostly we'll focus on hope. Join Kim B. Davis, author, playwright, radio personality, event consultant, professional speaker on the Kim B. Davis Show. Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening it is my pleasure to present to you Mr. Ken Whittaker. He is the Executive Director of Michigan United, and he's going to talk to us this evening about community engagement and politics. Good evening, Ken Whittaker. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. How are you, Kim B. Davis?
I am great. I'm so excited that you are here. So let's get right to it because I know we have a lot to talk about in a little bit of time. Michigan United does a lot from everything from immigration issues to dealing with joblessness and income disparities in communities. Talk to us about what Michigan United stands for. I know you guys are the voice for the little guy, but tell us exactly what it is that it does.
Yes, we're the voice for the little guy, but we believe in changing policy in order to change the lives for the little guy. And I won't even say guy. I'll say working families, low income families, immigrant communities, communities of color. Um, So we work to change policy to improve their lives, but not just work to change policy. We work to include the community into advocating for the policy changes that they need themselves. So we empower the community by teaching them leadership development, teaching what power is, why you need power, how to have a one-to-one, why one-to-ones are important. It's about building relationship. We teach the community about self-interest and mutual self-interest so that they learn how to organize and bring people together around a common cause so that we can organize to change the policies to improve our lives. So Michigan United is all about changing policy. I realize that there are a lot of service agencies out here, and there is a place for service agencies, but our organization is a power building organization and a policy change organization.
Fantastic. Okay, so you talked about power. And we know because you are a precinct delegate, you've been very heavily involved in politics. Would I be lying if I said over 25 years?
You wouldn't be lying, but it's been around 16.
Okay.
Um, Isaac Robinson drugged me into politics. Literally drugged me through my living room, through my dining room, into politics. But that was actually 17 years ago. Yeah.
So
And
17 years ago, you were dragged into this world of politics.
yeah, and I'm not a precinct delegate anymore. Believe it or not, my son and my daughter and my wonderful wife Shanae beat me out of my precinct delegate seat. There was three precinct delegates in this precinct, and the four of us and one other person somewhere in the district ran, and all three of them beat the crap out of me. So I'm not a precinct delegate anymore.
Well, it's not so bad when your wife and your children beat you. It's different if it's, your neighbor or a stranger across town. I
Right.
So, but I want to talk about that because you mentioned that with some excitement and love and passion. And, the last 4 years prior to the Biden administration, when we had the Trump administration, there was just chaos and just disinformation and a lot of mudslinging that happened. Not that it doesn't happen in politics, but the fact that it just increased exponentially during that time. Now we have gotten past the election. We have a new administration. President Biden, seems to be doing a great job. He's moving things forward, policies for American working families. And there are a lot of people who are saying that they're disillusioned. We saw January 6th, and I don't know about you, Ken, but I watched it on television and I had friends calling me, and we were like, what is happening? And, you know, I as far as I knew, I didn't see that coming. Other people said, there were sort of hints that something was coming, but I don't think even if you thought there was a hint that you thought it would be that. And so we see people who are angry, who are disillusioned, who are turning to violence to get their point across. You just talked about taking your power and changing policies because we know that's where it resides. It resides in the policy, it resides in the laws, it resides in the elected officials who are accountable to the voting public. What would you say, or how would you advise someone if they are angry and want to take to violence? What would you tell them, that there's a better way in learning from Michigan United, or would you say pick up your pitchfork and go forth?
Definitely don't pick up your pitchfork and go for it. There's definitely a better way than violence. When you have violence, you have a lack of conversation. When you have a lack of conversation, you have a lack of understanding. So at Michigan United, we teach people to have conversation, not for the goal of agreement, but for the goal of understanding. If we can understand each other, then there's no limit to the conversation we can have. There's no limit to the relationship we can build. So at Michigan United, yeah, if you're angry, we're going to send you over to our 501c4, our sister organization, Michigan People's Campaign, because we need you to run for office. We train people to run for office, and we teach them that you are enough. This society tells us time and time again that you're not enough. When it comes to running for office, the things I hear is I don't have enough education. I don't know enough. I don't have enough money, or my past is too shady, or I did this, or I did that. Who gives a dang?
Mhm.
Honestly, the electability conversation is one that needs to be thrown out the window. If you run, you can win, regardless of whether you are a black woman, a black man. If you're an Asian woman, an Asian man, it doesn't matter if you have a felony. It doesn't matter if you never graduated from college. If you are representative of your community, you have real lived experiences. You need to run for office, especially when you have a hard time holding elected officials accountable. Replace them with you. Plain and simple. Replace them with you. And that's where we are at Michigan People's Campaign, and honestly, Michigan United, because we can train people to be civically engaged with our C3. So we take that anger, we translate it. I mean, I learned to turn my private shames, and you've heard me say it before. I've learned to turn my private shames into public outrage. When you have public outrage, you can easily build a movement with purpose, and it's these movements that change policy. Violence won't change policy. Violence is honestly direct democracy. That's you like reacting. I'm just going to do something and it's going to change. No, our system moves slow. It is a representative democracy. You elect people who vote and change policy. You're not going to change policy by stabbing someone with a flagpole or hitting someone with a fire extinguisher or climbing walls with gas masks on or having Congress women and men hiding under their desks. That's not going to change policy. If anything, it's going to embolden people to reinforce the policies that you don't like.
Mhm.
So that's where we are.
Okay. Okay. What would you say? And I know there's a lot on the plates of American or politicians and just America as a whole from the pandemic. We're still dealing with COVID. We're still dealing with economic uncertainty. People are have lost jobs, but it seems that the economy is sort of taking a turn and coming back up. You have issues with education. What would you say is the most pressing issue for America? And I know I just gave you a big question.
You know, I normally run from the most pressing issue because we tend to fall in the trap of we're like this monolithic group. You know,
Yeah.
everybody has this one issue that's like their thing.
Mhm,
But if I had to lift something up, it's going to be this white supremacist radical right wing movement
mhm,
that is the face of voter suppression right now across this country. I've been telling electeds and activists and organizers alike that if we don't beat back this threat, nothing we organize on will get a victory. If we have our power to vote and access to the ballot box taken away, we cannot change policy.
Mhm.
This is the ultimate fight right now. And in this state, we had what 39 bills drop, in the legislature. I'm worried about them, but I'm a little less worried because we do have a Democratic governor who can veto. But I'm more concerned about a possible ballot initiative because we saw what a GOP legislature did when we got enough signatures for earned paid sick time.
Mhm.
They just pulled it right into their chambers, gutted it, passed it, and it has nothing to do with the governor. Governor didn't even have to sign it. So I'm
Mhm.
concerned about their go-arounds ballot initiative wise. But we have to beat back this voter suppression threat, and we have to do it two pronged. We have to fight in our states
Mhm.
with our state legislatures, and then we also have to organize nationally
Mhm.
for HR 1 and Senate Bill 1.
Mhm. So talk a little bit because I agree with you. I think right now, and I don't know how much of the Derek Chauvin murder trial you've watched or if you've watched any. And I understand it is traumatizing. It is very difficult to watch. I'm watching it because those types of cases, high profile cases interest me on one end. But on the second end, it sort of is a microcosm of everything that's going on in the United States in terms of racism, from a racist belief from a white cop who brutalizes an African American man for something minor. And then you have his defense team probing his personal life. He was a drug addict. He, was hooked on opioids. If he passed this counterfeit bill, so be it. The reality is he was still due for his day in court. He did not receive that. And this whole what did the police officer know and how things can turn violent. And I just look at it and I'm like, so we hear the same tropes. He was a big guy. He looked aggressive. He was erratic. Instead of here is a black man in America in a heavily policed area who was afraid because the police officer walked up with his baton and knocked on his window and doesn't, quite at the moment seem like he doesn't understand why the police officer is there, whether he does or whether he doesn't. And the police became judge, jury, and executioner. And we see this in Georgia, where we have the governor and other representatives coming together, putting together legislation that says, okay, so we're going to one up you. You decided that you were going to pass out water and do these types of voter registrations to increase it. Well, guess what? We're going to make it that much more difficult. Talk to me a little bit about how people locally can work to push back against that, because you talk about our Republican led legislature and we still have that here, and we don't want to have another, because I remember when was it Michigan right to work, you remember when that came on the ballot?
2012.
Yeah. And the language was convoluted, everybody was confused about it, and then legislation came after under the Snyder administration. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, isn't it that 60 days out before an election you're not allowed to talk about a ballot initiative?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I think, but I want to say that I think it's 60 days out. So there are things that are in place here, even in Michigan, just as you said, to continue to push back against us. But talk a little bit about what Michigan United is doing specifically to help push back against that locally here in Michigan.
We are building out our democracy defense campaign, and that centers around redistricting, voter suppression, voter rights, voter access, as well as infrastructure. Um, so We're bringing on a few organizers to staff lobby meetings. We'll be lobbying Senator Debbie Stabenow, Senator Peters, as well as some other congressional targets to make sure that they're standing up strong for voting rights and sounding off. In in November, when we had the big fight about certification of votes, a
Mhm.
lot of our elected officials are pretty quiet.
Yes.
That was bothersome.
Mhm.
So the activist community, the organizing community, we stepped up. We realized, okay, well, our electeds are being silent. Some of them. There were some that weren't, like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Debbie Dingle. They were like, you need to do something now.
Mhm.
So we mobilized. We educated the community on what was going on. um, we mobilized people to the Wayne County Board of Canvassers meeting, stacked it, and honestly, that was a turning point
Mhm.
because it was the Wayne County Board of Canvassers who voted to certify after voting to not certify. I've never seen a decision actually change by public comment, but later on, we realized that that decision was changed because they realized they were being live streamed.
Mhm. Mhm.
Michigan United was live streaming that meeting for the world to see. It was on MSNBC. It was on
Mhm.
CNN.
Mhm.
And when they realized they were being live streamed, I keep saying they,
Mhm.
but really it was one person
Mhm.
realized that they were being live streamed. They revoted. They changed their votes. So we mobilize people, and then we have them advocating for the changes that we need to happen in our community. Power. The definition of power is organized people and organized money.
Mm.
We're never going to have as much money as the other side, but
Right.
we always have more people.
Mhm.
And that's why we're building relationships from the left to the middle to the slight right, because it's going to take all of us, this huge coalition in relationship, true relationship with each other, understanding each other in order to beat back this threat.
Excellent. So I I I would assume that you're doing something similarly nationally. Is there any specific differences? Are you specifically targeting Georgia right now, or what is that looking like?
Well, Michigan United is part of a national network called People's Action. People's Action has affiliates all over the country, and we do have a national strategy as far as getting the Senate bill and the House bills passed. We've been in communication with Senator Schumer as far as the timeline on this, and we're very confident that that we need to continue our state fights until the go is given for our federal fights. But we're working both federally and state. So all of our local affiliates are pushing their state congregations and their congressional their congressional delegations as well. So we have a two-pronged approach.
Excellent, excellent. You got your work cut out for you. There is just so much, and you guys do fundraising also to fund those efforts, correct?
Yes, we are grant funded and individual donor funded. We're building up our individual donor base because we're membership. We have over 100 member institutions and over 300 new 300 new individual members. We have a membership of $60 a month. I mean $60 a year or $5 a month. And our institutional members also pay dues, and that helps us run the programs that we need to run in immigrant rights, criminal justice, environmental justice, healthcare, workers' rights, our projects such as our vaccination equity and vaccine education. We have community navigators in Detroit, Flint. We're building them out in Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids to go into the community to educate the community on what's in the recovery plan, what's in the American Jobs Plan, how to get a vaccine, help people get signed up to get a vaccine. get rid of some of the misinformation around vaccines because is accessible as this vaccine is across the country, it's not that accessible to our communities.
Absolutely. That's correct.
You know, you've got sites that are open from 9 to 5,
Mhm.
and we got people who are working from 9 to 5 who can't take a day off, otherwise they'll be fired.
Right.
We've got people with transportation issues. We have centers that are downtown, and we have, people who are scared to go downtown. You have mixed status families where
Mhm.
that are scared to go downtown, right? And then we talk about Lyft codes and Uber codes, but you're going to have an Uber wait for an hour?
Right.
No, there's many um, different facets of even vaccine rollout that we're trying to change with our community navigators, and connecting the people who are the most directly impacted by COVID and the least likely to get information, connecting them to the information they need to survive.
Excellent. It's interesting because I want to say it was a community, it was some sort of survey that was done in California. And they were talking about how wealthy suburbanite California communities had access to the vaccine and were getting their vaccinations versus some of the people of color communities who were maybe 5-10 minutes away from them who didn't have access. And so it's definitely an issue right now that a lot of communities are facing. And I know in Michigan our COVID numbers are going up, which is scary. And we have these new variants that are coming, and there is a lot of misinformation about the vaccine. Matter of fact, all three. You can hear all kinds of urban discussions about all of that. So
Kids tell me a bunch of them.
you can find it on TikTok too. So I'm sure
Oh,
it is interesting to hear some of the stories. But that is good work that you guys are doing, making sure that people have information because right now, outside of economy, outside of racism that's happening in this country, the next biggest issue is COVID. We got to figure out how to get around it because if we don't, we won't be able to open up the way that we do or the way that we should. And even if we are, and you still have hot spots, then that means that poor urban communities may be severely impacted while other communities aren't. And it's not fair. And you talk about downtown Detroit and people being afraid to go to downtown Detroit. It's because there's money, correct?
yep,
Yep.
yep.
Lots of money, a lot of well-to-do people, and things are done a little bit differently down there. There isn't a tolerance for certain behaviors. And so when you go downtown, you better be on your P's and Q's because people are paying attention. And there's a camera on
Every,
every street.
yes,
So you can't get away with anything that you want to do. Um, and so it's
including driving while black, or
yes,
driving with no insurance, or driving with expired plates. That moratorium ended, what, 8 days ago?
yes.
We know that these cameras can look at license plates. People are scared.
Mhm, mhm. And in Michigan, that is a huge issue because we do still have the highest insurance rates in the country, although we have alternatives now. I don't necessarily know enough to say how it's impacted. I know that there are many people, you talk about transportation issues. There are many people who simply cannot afford to purchase the tags for their vehicle, cannot afford to purchase insurance, have to get back and forth to work, and are sort of stuck in this cycle where you are trying to do the best that you can, but you can't do it legally the way that you should because you just don't make enough money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the income inequality. And no stimuluses and all that are nice, but even those can't necessarily lift you up out of a situation that will not pay you what you should be paid.
If I could say, stimulus is, or stimmies as we call them,
Yes.
it's like a one-shot deal, except it came 2 3 times. But like universal basic income, like what Stockton, California tried,
Mm-hmm.
that's different. That
Hmm.
alleviated that stress from month to month to month about how you were going to maintain.
Hmm.
And there were people who took that money and were able to find a better job because they were less stressed, because they could pay their bills, because they could take a chance in not going to work so that they can go to an interview,
Mhm.
right? So like, no, those one shot deals, yes, they're helpful. They're super helpful. But we've got countries that were lifting their their citizens monthly
Mhm.
through this pandemic. Monthly.
Mhm.
Our
Mhm.
country doubled down on individualism,
Yes.
doubled down on rugged individualism.
Mhm.
Whatever you're going through, it's your fault.
That's
Pull
right.
yourself up by your bootstraps. Have you ever tried to pull yourself up by your bootstraps? It's
Now it
impossible.
is. You need a helping hand. I say that all the time. I said, "Stop saying you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps. Someone helped you.
Yes.
Somebody somewhere. It doesn't mean that someone gave you money. It could be someone put in a good word for you. Someone made a phone call for you. Someone gave you a lead on a job. You were sitting there and you were like, I don't even know where to look. And they said, well, go look at such and such. And you went and now you have a job. That is someone that helped you. And, I believe in the safety net. I know that we had to have some parameters so people don't take advantage of it. I get all that, but I do believe in a safety net where people who are literally working paycheck to paycheck, who cannot, as you said, take a day off to go get a vaccination or to vote, because that's also an issue. If you can't take it off to get a vaccination shot, you can't take it off to go vote either. So what do you do? And those are the people who need to be engaged, but the problem is their whole outlook or what they see is every day I got to go to work. I got to pay
Yep.
bills.
Yep.
My light, my gas, my water, my kids, my wife, husband, whatever it is, my grandma, somebody sick. These are the people that right now, this is what matters because this is all I can see. I can't see all this other stuff that you all see because you all have the opportunity and the ability to see that because you have a different life than I have. And so I think that, it's important that we speak to those issues. And when we talk about driving in Michigan, specifically without insurance, without driver's licenses, without tags, those are issues that we are still struggling with. And even for people who didn't make it to the moratorium, if you didn't make it to the moratorium by the end date, now what do you do? Has there, what is the discussion like for that?
You
So,
just tell the police officer, I got an appointment in 6 months to get my tags. I'm gonna
right.
let you go.
Probably not.
Because now at some point they're like, let me see your insurance. I haven't gotten that yet. Well, I smell something.
Yes.
Please step out of the car. And now
Yeah.
you got a whole bunch of other issues.
Mhm.
Something subjective as I smell something.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
it opens us up to issues that some of our counterparts don't have.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And I know, and this is a little bit off. Weed has been legalized or marijuana has been legalized. And I understand that it's legalized. That's not something that I do. But I always look at it and I say, for people of color, if you're smoking, whether you have a prescription for it or you just do it because that's something you enjoy, if you are pulled over by the police, you're going to be scrutinized much harder than someone else will,
Yeah.
whether you are legal or not. And Shanae was on the show a couple weeks ago, and we
Hmm.
were talking, and I told her, I said, I know someone who drives a Mercedes, is about to have his PhD. He is a global speaker, dynamo, brilliant individual, completely legal, was dropping a friend off in a neighborhood that was his own. And he lives out in a posh Michigan, southeastern Michigan suburb. And the police officer, he wasn't thinking about it because he's legal. He looked up and he saw the police officer behind him. And as he put his turn signal on and turned, their lights came on and they pulled him over and said, this vehicle has been reported or is stolen. This isn't your vehicle." And he said, "It is my vehicle. I picked it out. I know it's my vehicle." And in his head, he's thinking like, "I know what I have." And the officer had reversed one of the numbers or the digits in the license plate, so it came up on the wrong thing. Yes, and he pulled him over, and so he came back over and joked, "Oh, oh, I'm sorry. You got to give me that one." And he's like, "So what'd you pull me over for?" "So you ran my license plate without cause because there's a black man
There you go.
driving a very expensive high-end Mercedes, not your basic, a high-end
Hmm.
Mercedes, and he has locks and he, very tall, and you pulled me over because you didn't think that I belong."
Yeah,
So
yeah.
circling back around to Derek Chauvin, it's sort of the same thing where you automatically assume that I've done something wrong. Yes, I've been accused, but in America, you are supposed to be proven innocent. You're innocent until proven guilty. That's not supposed to have changed. I know that doesn't necessarily apply to folk of color. However, that's what's supposed to be. And as a police officer, that's what people are supposed to uphold.
Innocent until proven black.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Plain and simple. You
Absolutely.
know, that stop started out of prejudice. It
Mhm.
started out of prejudice.
Mhm.
You know.
Mhm. And so as we circle back around, because that's a great point, as we circle back around to Michigan United, these are the issues that you're fighting because people are looking down on people because of their economic status or their ethnicity or, where they come from, especially when we talk about immigration. And that's a volatile topic. And we could spend the next 3 hours talking about, the do's and don'ts of what that is. But, people look at it and they say, well, you shouldn't be allowed to come here. And I'm like, but this is a country of immigrants. Your people were allowed to come
Right.
here.
You shouldn't have been allowed to come here.
Exactly.
You came here and devastated and killed and destroyed. You
Absolutely.
shouldn't have been allowed to come here.
And I have been blessed with opportunities to sit before Native American different populations and listen to them talk about their history and their country. And it's always funny to me because, the white people will always say something like, well, but we accept, they're like, no, you didn't. You killed us. You put us on reservations. All these things. And they get really quiet. And I'm like, you cannot do double speak and say out of one mouth, that we are the greatest nation on earth, but then want to deny the fact that Africans built this country through slave labor, that you forced us here, took everything away from us. And then when you told us we had to excel and be great, and we did, you still wanted to move the starting line away from us because you didn't want us to be able to compete fairly. So it
It's
is
a
important.
scam.
It is.
It's a
But
scam.
this
Yeah.
is why Michigan United is the group to address these issues because you guys are doing phenomenal work in terms of making sure that people have a voice and that people understand where their power comes from and people learn how to organize and understand the importance of running for office. And I always encourage people when people start railing, I'm like, run for office. And they say the same thing. I can't, Kim, I can't. I'm like, yes, you can.
Come
Yes, you
talk
can.
to me. Yes, you
Yes.
can. So when you running, Kim?
You know what? Stop it. So I'm going to be real transparent. So when I was in college years ago, my dream was to become mayor. It's still there, but I'm doing podcasts, I'm on the radio, I've got my books, and I have my family right now. And so, maybe in 10, 15 years, once things slow down a little bit, I'll call you.
All right, I'll be around here. God willing, I'll be around here.
Amen. Amen. Ken, thank you so much for coming on our show. Tell us how we can reach you and how we can find you. And then before you go, tell us one thing that you would like to achieve during your term as executive director.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on your show, Kim. I really appreciate the invitation. You can reach Michigan United on our website, MI, as in Michigan, united.org. And our sister organization is Michigan People's Campaign. That's mipeoples.org. We're looking forward to you joining us as we throw down this year and into next year, because we've got to face politics to change. Uh, I'm looking forward to building relationship as executive director. I addressed the staff this past Monday as it was my first official day solo as executive director. And I told them all, I'm like, our bottom line, our least common denominator is relationship. We have to understand each other, be in relationship with each other, and then we can fix the problems of our society. Because Michigan United is a multiracial, multi ethnic, multi-class organization made up of directly impacted individuals. And when we are in relationship with each other, understanding each other, lifting up each other's perspectives and respecting them, we can replicate that outside of our organization and solve the problems in the communities that we serve. So if nothing else, my goal is to make sure that we're building relationship with each other inside and outside of our communities for the next 8 to 10 years. And there you go. I just put a time limit on it, 8 to 10 years, because we can't be stuck doing the same things. Because we got to make sure that we did what Ray Solomon did, and that's groom the next generation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. That was phenomenal. That was a phenomenal way to end our interview today. Remember, you can find Ken on MichiganUnited.com, correct?
miunited.org and mipeoples.org, or just search Michigan United on Facebook. You'll find us. Michigan People's Campaign. You'll find us. Look for Ken Whittaker. It's in my profile. Executive Director, Michigan United.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Kim B. Davis Show. Now, you know you can find Kimberly Batchelor Davis, and Bachelor is spelled Batchelor. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. I'm trying to be on everything. You can find out more information about me at kimbdavis.com. You can see this show on youtube.com/ Kimberly Batchelor Davis. And you can also catch us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google. Thank you so much for being here, Ken. We appreciate you. We hope that you will join us again and come back on and talk more politics. And as always, remember, be magnificent.